after the cop is killed and they get back in the car, that sequence was done days later on a soundstage. We were using the exact same plates, so the same background. Nick gets in the car, he lights the cigarette. It's so seamless, you can't even tell that that was days later on the stage. And that's how incredible the technology is.
Allan and Yuval, it's great to see you both. And I'm really excited to talk about this movie. It is quite the blast from start to finish. I'll start with Allan and then Yuval. What about the script and the project really sparked both of your interests to want to be a part of it?
Alex Leibovich from Hammerstone, who really put this thing together, had sent me the script as we were sort of looking to do a couple films to produce together. And immediately I was just sucked right in to sort of figure out this journey over the course of one night in real time. I was really sucked into this idea of revenge and redemption and sort of all the twists and turns that came with it. And obviously, when you're dealing with something that's confined to one space for the majority of time, it becomes one of those inherent challenges that you get excited to take on to see how you're going to pull it off. And so I think that was something that really, just from a sort of a producerial narrative, was really exciting for me.
My journey with the film started like many, many years ago. It's actually a funny story. After I made my first film, Bethlehem, 10 years ago, I had this moment in Hollywood where they send you 10,000 scripts, and I was reading scripts and they're all horrible. I'm sure, Allan, it's like you read, you're like, what? So you read 10,000 garbage straight. And suddenly I read two scripts that were great. One is a horror film and one is this guy, right? This script. And it was like 2014, right? And then I didn't get both of them, because my film Bethlehem is not like these films. And in Hollywood, if you didn't do exactly the same film before, you're not going to get to do the exact same thing. So they're like, no, the producer, they really liked me. I like them, but they gave it to somebody else. And every few years, I was like looking, I was like, why is Sympathy not made? So I was looking, IMDb, it's not made. I would email the producer, what's going on with Sympathy? And they'll be like, yeah, it's in HB, we have this thing, we have this attached. Every 3 years, like in 2016, 2009, even I had a talk with them again in 2017, and we saw a different film, and again, they went somewhere. Then anyway, I asked them at the end of 2002, in 2022 even, in the beginning or the end of 2021, and they said, we lost the right, like we don't have it. And I'm like, really? How interesting. So I have my agent connect me with the writer, Luke Paradise, and I was like, I convinced him and his people, that was the biggest issue, to sell it to me. And I bought a right on it, for which I never did on a script, never. And the reason why I like the script was the stuff that Allan was saying. It was like this two-hander cat and mouse game, confined thriller, but especially I like the dark sense of humor that was already in the script. You know what I mean? Like these touches that I was like, yeah, that's what, And I sent it to my manager, who sent it to Alex Leibovich, who really loved it and immediately kind of was into it. And then in a miraculous way, the script was made in months. And, this can take, and I got an option only for a year. They sold it to me. And my manager was like, nobody can make it in a year. Nobody's going to make it. Why are you buying? And I gave my money, my fucking artist money to buy an option. And then Alex kind of put it together in 3 months because Joel was available. I knew Joel, and there was suddenly a spot in the summer, and then it was like a mirror, So that's the story of how it came together, and what we like about this project too.
I love that you had that drive, because it really does show in every shot of this movie, and I especially love the look of this film. I mean, as much as it is Joel and Nick playing off of one another, there really is a sense of tension just in how the movie looks. And I'd love to hear how you and Stephen Holler and your DP went about, collaborating on finding the look of the film.
The privilege of this film was that there's so few locations and so few looks, you know what I mean? So in a way, there's 3 or actually 4 looks. One is the driving look. And the driving is actually like only people, if I ask you like off your head, how much you think the film is driving, people typically say more, even at the script level, they'll say, it's 60%, but it's only like 30%, 35%, it's like a third. Okay, so it's a third driving, and that's one look. And then we had outside Vegas night, right? When shit happens outside the car and it's the night and whatever. And that's another look that's kind of extreme because it's jet black and whatever. And then you have the diner. And then you have the outside the diner with the fire. So that's it. Like in other films, you have 10,000 locations. You have 10,000, each you have to dress. No, here it's just like 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. So it gives you this cleanness that you can say, okay, you go with the black of night, with the red color, which also follows Nick's hair and jacket, and the red diner, the fire, and that color. Steve, this idea of cutting the diners red with this blue ish color was kind of great. And then the drive is all these lights into, all these reflections, and that's we had to study. We had to learn how to use this LED stage, which kind of none of us was an expert, on. And me and Allan and Steve, we were driving these weird places in the outskirts of Vegas to find places to shoot, and then we had to shoot it with these cameras to create plates, and then we had to make sure that it matches what we shoot inside the LED, how it's going to shoot the exterior shots of the car. It was that was really technologically, it was a big challenge, I'm sure Allan can tell a story, but it was really a thing to figure out how to do this LED thing in Vegas,
Yeah, Allan, I'd love to hear more from you as well, because you and I had talked, off in between the interview or lead up to the interview about your excitement in the LED volume and everything. So I'd love to hear your side of it as well.
Yeah, well, that was a big part of figuring out how to put the film together, to be quite honest, was because even though the joke was people always thought that there was so much more driving than there was, it wasn't as much as people like to say when they look at the script, like, the whole movie's 2 guys in a car. But it was significant enough that we needed to figure out how to put it together in a way that was cost effective, but also gave the actors the flexibility and Yuval the flexibility to do resets and sort of get all these pages, put together. So we ended up finding this wonderful studio called View Networks in Vegas. And they had an infrastructure set up in Tampa and other parts around the US, but they had actually never hosted a feature film before. And so they had been doing commercials. They were very heavy in the sports world. So we met with them and they said, look, we've got this 40,000 square foot studio. We're utilizing sort of this volume tech, and whatever it takes to bring you guys here, we can prove to you that, we're the right place to do this. And so, the tech was new to all of us. So we thought, this is pretty easy. We'll just put it up on the wall and then, Yuval can pick exactly what he wants. Sure. It's like, whatever. It was a very fun and complicated ordeal because obviously there was a specific journey that you all wanted to sort of chart through the film as these guys are going further and further out into the sort of outskirts of the Vegas sort of limelight. And so we physically went and we created our own plates. Every single background, every single shot was bespoke. It was Steve Holleran. We needed to get a rig that was essentially the same height as the car in the film. For perspective, we rigged it with 8 cameras essentially, and then we went out with the Vegas PD. Yuval and Steve are in the back of this car with this crazy contraption with all the monitors feeding us the image. I'm at the driver's seat. I've got a walkie-talkie to the cops in one hand, and I'm basically stunt driving. Yuval's screaming at me to go faster and faster and faster. And I'm like, we're going to get pulled over or arrested, obviously forgetting that the cops are escorting us essentially. So we spent basically one long night, Boulder City, Vegas, downtown Fremont, Henderson, pretty much all over the place, several hours just recording this footage. And then View was obviously able to put that up on the screen. And so it was, honestly, I got to say that I think for the actors especially, it was very turnkey. When you're shooting on location and you're using real life cars and you're driving, it's complicated and it's time consuming and it actually can be very expensive. And so we were able to crank out, like 10 pages like that. We were able to turn things around. And even if we ran out of time one night and we missed a shot or we needed to pick it up, we would actually, here's a fun one. I don't know if you've all told this one yet, but in the police sequence, obviously spoiler, whoever's going to watch this has already seen the movie, so it's fine. But after the cop is killed and they get back in the car, that sequence was done days later on a soundstage we were using the exact same plates, so the same background. Nick gets in the car, he lights a cigarette. It's so seamless, you can't even tell that was days later on the stage. And that's how incredible the technology is.
Yeah, I couldn't tell at all. I literally thought it was the same, same day shot. Yeah. So that's very impressive. And so, I mean, speaking of Nick, he delivers just an incredible performance in this movie, as he always does. And I'm curious, he is someone who seems to be a little more selective with projects nowadays, now that he's starting to see sort of a whirlwind of popularity again. And I'm curious how it was, going about getting him involved in the film.
I mean, Yuval's story is, in terms of spending time with Nick and getting him into the film is an incredible one. But for us, it was honestly just it was timing. I got to be honest with you. There was this window, and as Yuval said, this movie came together incredibly fast. I mean, most movies, just to cast, it's months. It could take years just to get one actor attached. And the truth is, we did put this together. I think it was 5 weeks. Like, from the time that we decided we were going to make this film to the time that Yuval and I were on the ground in Vegas was literally 5 weeks. It's unheard of. And so Nick happened to have a window, just as Joel did, and both had a hard out. Pretty much, it was like August 22nd. And so we knew that we had to back into that and get it done. And Nick fell in love with the script and then met Yuval.
The thing about the timing here was significant. I mean, it's like, first of all, as a person, like you go from being basically unemployed and unemployable to directing a film with Nick Cage in like a week. You know what I mean? It's like suddenly it happened. It's very strange, Then you need time to prep, and we did. The drama was we needed to figure out this LED stuff, and we didn't have time. Nick came in, and I had my first conversation with him. He read the script. I mean, there's a whole melodrama about when he's reading offers, whatever. I won't bore you into that. I mean, it's interesting, but Allan, if you want to, but like for me, it depends what you want to tell, But like for me, it was. I had a call with him, and he was like, and he told me, listen. I read the script, and what I see here, I see a guy. First of all, he says to me, I read about you that you studied philosophy and metaphysics, and I want to go ontological with this character. So I'm like, oh, great, let's go, right? And then we started talking about Milton, we had I put lines of Milton in the trailer. You have a line from Milton. I don't know if you noticed, but like that started like that. This excitement that there is this other dimension to this. On the one hand, it's a pulpy thriller, but there's another dimension, this existential, like this guy is coming from another realm. He's kind of, not in a supernatural way, but in a human way, So we bonded on that. And then it started with Nick. What happens is you have this, he's like, I've never worked with anybody like this, that he's so fanatic. Like basically 5-6 weeks before the production, you get a sense that all he does is the film. Like you get a sense that he sits in with the script 8 hours a day and texts me 10,000 times, like, what about this line? Can we change this? Look at this video of an interview between Truman Capote and Tennessee Williams. Look how they speak. Isn't it interesting? And this jacket is wearing, constantly. Like me and Allan are in a outside some shithole in Henderson, like, driving at night. And I get this text, can I cut that line? And he's a fanatic, the guy, and he comes up with all these ideas and all this thing, and then you also have to manage it because some of it is great, some of it you don't want in the film. So that's the art of, dealing with him. It's like he wants you also to protect him, like he tells you, but it's like a volcano with ideas, and then we had a lot of kind of, excitement about it, a lot of disagreements, but once we started shooting, it kind of all clicked. It's like there was something, again, the key to it was the black humor of the story and what he was doing. So he would start doing stuff and I would laugh behind the monitor. He would start doing, and I would do like, and you would see me behind the monitor. It would be like, that's good, all right, let's do it. And then he would do it more, and you're like, as a director, you're like their first audience, basically. You're like the person who sees it for the first time. And once I started laughing from all the shit that he was doing, it egged him on also. And he was going through this stuff, and it was great. It was like this thing that we just took the script, and another thing that happened because of the way we shot it, in the diner, also in the car, is that we could do like really long takes of like 6-7 minutes sometimes of like they would run. Nick, it was funny. He was like, you remember that, Alan? He was bitching about the dialogue. He said, I have so much dialogue.
Too much.
I have too much dialogue. It's not human. We have 3 weeks. I can't study all this dialogue. It was like that all the time. And then he came to set and he basically did 10 pages of dialogue by heart. I've never seen anything like it. So he was like, because I was initially like, remember we said, well, you think he's going to do more than 5 pages? And I'll be like, Nick, you're already sitting. It's already set up. You maybe want to go on more instead of us breaking. And, and he's like, okay. And then he would do another 5 pages. And you realize he knows the whole film by heart, basically. It was just, so it's like, we would sit down and Joel said, I never had anything like it. I remember Joel was like, you sit down or you're driving or whatever, and they suddenly do a 8-minute dialogue scene, like in theater. They just, we have 2 cameras on them. They're both sitting there, and we do big stretches. So you actually get into it in a big way. That's what happened in both in the car and in the diner.
I was going to say, I have to add the fact that I think my favorite part of all of this is that Nick just decided to show up with red hair.
Yeah. I mean, during this pre-production, he started sending these pictures, and he was like, this is, he suddenly stopped communicating about how he looks, and then suddenly sent that picture. And I was with his makeup person who was on the meeting, and I was like, what's going on? Send me what's going on. I want to know what's, and then he sent this picture, with the red hair. And we were like, okay, interesting. And it took us a moment, like, and then we remembered the saying, right, Alan? There's this saying, Nick, the worst or the craziest, the crazier the Nick Cage.
Oh, yeah.
The better the performance, or the better the film. Not the
well, I think we have it. I think the clip, I think they're going to release the clip next week, because Yuval and I really pushed it. Was Nick's doing a little BTS interview on set, and he's basically talking about how the fan community addresses that. You can tell what kind of performance Nick's going to have based on hair. And then he goes, hello. And he embraces it. It's amazing.
Yeah. No, he said, no, it's even like the saying is about the quality of the film, not his.
Oh, right.
Film. Like, adaptation. He has, all the films that is great. He has crazy hair. So there's a correlation there, So I hope that the correlation is going to work for us, because he definitely has crazy hair,
It's definitely a striking visual. I remember the first image that was released for the movie. I was like, I can't tell if that's the lighting or if that's his actual red hair. And then everything else came out. I was actually very intrigued by it. And I think it works well for the mystery behind his character. Now, before I let you both go, Alan, I wanted to come to you just to look away from the film for a moment. I mean, Death Stranding, you're a part of that creative team, obviously. Solidarity with everything that's going on right now with the writers and the actors. But I'm curious, in the lead up to that, how has that been, getting to be a part of that, especially since Hideo Kojima has almost never had, or actually really has not had, an adaptation of a project, get the ball rolling as much as this so far.
Yeah, no, listen, this is an incredibly, incredibly important undertaking for him. This is his baby. This is the first time that he went out sort of on his own as an independent studio and made a game. And that game became critically acclaimed. It became very prolific. Unfortunately, due to the strike and due to sort of everything that's happening in our industry right now, I can't say as much as I'd like to, other than there's going to be some very exciting news coming up soon. And we're incredibly excited about the direction that we're taking it in. I think it's going to be an incredible surprise, not just for video game fans, but for movie-going fans and audiences in general, who I don't think have seen anything quite like this before.
And he's pretty involved in the creative process.
Every step of the way.
Well, I love to hear that as a Kojima fan. I have not played the game. I'm an Xbox owner instead of PlayStation.
Oh, no.
No. I know. I'm sorry, but I will say, I mean, I've heard nothing but great things, and I'm excited to see what you do with that. But in the meantime, I really do look forward to spreading the word about Sympathy for the Devil. It is such a great ride from start to finish, and I think people are going to love it. So Yuval and Alan, thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I really do appreciate it.
It's great seeing you. Thanks, Graham.
Great seeing you, man.
Absolutely. Have a good rest of your weeks.